And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And after this brothering, awesome moment, he walks up to me and goes, Roddy Piper, nice to meet you. And I was like, nice to meet you. I was crushed. Crushed.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life is wrestling.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Deaner. I am Cody Deaner, and I am a professional wrestler. I'm a professional wrestling producer with TNA Wrestling. I'm a professional speaker traveling all across North America, delivering my story to youth across the nation. I am also a father of 4 wonderful children and a husband to 1 wonderful wife. And I'm a podcaster. This is my podcast. Welcome back. If you're coming back, if this is your first time here, welcome to this project known as Wrestling is Life is Wrestling, where we explore both the wonderful business of professional wrestling and this wonderful thing we call life, and how they collide and create magic, and all the things we can learn in this wonderful collision between wrestling and our lives. Today's guest, Tommy Dreamer. I'm super excited about it. Before I talk about my buddy Tommy, let me just tell you about some other buddies I have, and that is my sponsors. First of all, that's Rest When Dead Clothing. Check out their entire collection at restwhendead.ca. Check them out on Instagram at restwhendeadclothing. They have signature series hats for myself, as well as signature series shirts for me, my buddies in TNA, Crazy Steve and Jody Threat, as well as a whole bunch of awesome other swag, including some female workout tank tops. My wife loves hers, as well as some brand new Rest When Dead backpacks. Go check them out on restwhendead.ca and do it quick before they're gone. I have a feeling that this limited edition series of backpacks is going to sell out really quick. Go check them out on restwhendead.ca. And my supplement sponsor, ceofit.ca. And there's a couple of deals that they have. Number 1, free shipping to any order over $120. That's for you Canadians. For Americans, $6 flat shipping. Doesn't matter how big your order is. Go get 10 boxes of supplements, $6 of shipping. That's over at ceofit.ca. Other ways you can support this project of mine is by going to prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Deaner. Get yourself a t-shirt. Cameo. I've been doing some cameos this past week. It's been fun. And you can hit me up there. Cameo.com/Cody Deaner. I did some birthday cameos. I did some for another YouTube show that wanted a shout out, and I'm happy to do one for you. Cameo.com/Cody Deaner. And I'll share my love of pro wrestling, give you an encouraging note. Do whatever you want for you over there. Birthday, gift, anniversary, graduation, whatever you got going on. Again, that's cameo.com/Cody Deaner. Better yet, how about you head over to my Patreon? If you're super excited about this Tommy Dreamer interview like I am, well, you don't even have to wait right now to even listen to this intro and wait for the commercial to end in the middle and listen to my outro, and then wait for next week for part 2. You can listen to the entire conversation, part 1 and part 2, early and ad-free. It's been up there since this past weekend at patreon.com/Cody Deaner. I've got all my past guests archived there, both to watch them and to listen to them. You can download it, listen to it at your leisure. That's all there over at patreon.com/Cody Deaner, as well as bonus stories that I do not share here on the free version of the show on this podcast. It's only available at patreon.com. Bonus stories from every single one of my guests. And Tommy Dreamer was kind enough to drop 2 bonus stories on us after this conversation. You can go check them out right now by starting a free trial at patreon.com/Cody Deaner. That's right. Try it for free. If you love it, consider being a supporter of this project known as Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. Okay, let's talk about Tommy Dreamer. First of all, I want to just state, because I'm going to get comments, I'm going to get people probably tweeting at me at Cody Deaner, or dropping me in my comments on my Instagram, why didn't you ask Tommy about what's going on with TNA right now? Well, we didn't get to that because this conversation that Tommy Dreamer and I had happened before the recent announcement that Scott D'Amore is no longer with TNA Wrestling. So I'm just throwing that out there before you listen to this conversation. This was recorded a few weeks ago before the announcement that Scott D'Amore was no longer the president of TNA. And that is why that did not get raised with this conversation with my friend Tommy Dreamer. Now, what does get raised is some amazing stories. I think we need to call this story time with Tommy. This is like no other conversation I've had previously on this show. Tommy is a storyteller, and you're going to learn that right away. I'm a storyteller myself. Like when I go into schools and deliver my speeches and my programs to young people, I share stories with them because I believe in the power of story. And I believe that we can pull life lessons out of stories. I believe that stories can inspire us. They can motivate us. And if not, they can make us laugh. They can make us cry. They make us feel something. We in the wrestling business are in the business of making you feel something. And I think today, during this conversation with ECW original and former WWE star and current TNA wrestler, creative team member, producer. He wears a lot of hats in TNA, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have him on here, is because I've worked closely with Tommy over the last number of years. I've got to know him personally, and after getting to know Tommy Dreamer personally, even though our relationship does go back, 15 or more years now. And you're going to hear that in this conversation, kind of when I first got acquainted with Tommy. It has to do with Tommy Dreamer and the WWE, and a little conversation we had on the phone when he worked in the office there. There's a little spoiler kind of teaser for the conversation here today. But I want to have him on because I know that Tommy Dreamer loves wrestling. And he's kind of like me. He has wrestler brain, where when he's out and about in the quote unquote real world, he sees wrestling connections everywhere he goes. I'm like that too. Tommy Dreamer's like that. And he's a storyteller just like me. So let's just sit back and relax and listen to some of these amazing, wonderful stories that Tommy Dreamer has to share. And I want to say thank you to Tommy, because actually right off the hop, one of the first stories that he shares is a story that he has never shared publicly before. And he opened up and shared some stories with me that, quite honestly, you might be able to tell in our conversation, at times kind of left me speechless. And I wasn't even sure how to even follow up on some of these stories because they're just so amazing. And it was just like a session that I've had numerous times with Tommy, where he kind of holds court in the locker room. A bunch of wrestlers sit around and just listen to Tommy Dreamer tell some amazing stories. That's what these next 2 weeks are all about. So if you love wrestling, you love life, and you love stories that have to do with professional wrestling and this wild life that we live in this wrestling industry, then you are very much going to enjoy today's conversation. If that is you, please consider following me on all podcast platforms, or whichever one you're using right now: Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or if you're on YouTube, leave a comment, let me know. Leave me a review on any of those podcast platforms. Helps the algorithm and people know about this project. So I appreciate it very much. I appreciate all the support I've been getting with this project over the last number of months. And I appreciate you joining me right now as we all together listen to part 1 with EC Dub original, the Innovator of Violence, Tommy Dreamer. How's it going, Tommy Dreamer?
I am well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for doing this.
And on no problem. For you, and on no problem. And on my iPhone, my first iPhone ever.
Your first iPhone ever. How is it going from Android to iPhone, than Android that you had for decades, probably?
13 years. I'm not a fan.
13. Oh, really?
I like the fact of like groups texts, but and I like the pictures. I think the picture quality is actually better on an Android. I
Mhm.
lost all my contacts. I lost all my pictures. Cannot be transferred from my 13-year-old Android to this, but it does have its perks. I'm just not overly a big fan, and I don't really know how to work this phone. I press mute, yet it still rings. I mute all my messages, and then like I'm trying to sleep, and then my Delta like time tells me something, and I
Oh,
get woken up for that. So
yeah.
it's very conscious to your life.
Why did you do this? Did you do this because you just got ribbed so much for being the
No,
only
no.
Impact person that didn't have it? No?
Well, I'll tell you why I kept my old phone. I kept
Yeah.
my old phone because I have messages from my daughters when they were kids. I have
Right.
messages from Dusty Rhodes, Terry
Mhm.
Funk, and my mother.
Mhm.
And
Wow. Okay.
those were all like big, big. I don't want to ever lose this phone.
Yeah.
Just because, sometimes I do listen to their messages and then I get really sad and I cry, but that's okay.
Mhm.
And then that's why I didn't want to get rid of them, because a long time ago when I got that phone, I had lost 3 messages from my old phone to that phone. And then I
Mhm.
just said, I'm never doing that ever again, because I lost messages from my kids when my kids had their baby voices. And, my daughters are going to be 20 now. And like, it's crazy how time flies, but you have just a
Mhm.
snippet of a memory of
Yeah.
that. And and then good old Scott Demore, demoralizing me, said that if I didn't get a new phone in 2024, he would fine me $500 a week.
A
So I
week?
was a week.
Oh
Oh
my
yeah, he
god.
wasn't messing.
Oh,
He's one of those people that he holds prejudice against the green bubble,
yes, he
and
does.
he hated it. To his defense,
Yeah.
because I'm a fair person, I was not able to be involved in group chats at work
Mhm.
because it blocked me out, because the world is against the androids.
Mhm.
So that's messed up. What if it all turns out that the aliens that are going to take over the earth are all the creators of the iPhone? And if you were an Android user, you weren't part of it.
You
They,
make a very good point.
it
It's
happened
it's
and they live, brother. We never
it
knew.
did. It did. Did you know Roddy?
Yes,
Did
very
you?
well.
Yeah. Did you like hang out with Roddy?
I can tell you several Roddy Piper
Okay.
stories.
This isn't usually how I start at all. So you are very special, Tommy. I don't normally start talking about phones, aliens, and Roddy Piper, but I
it's
don't
all good.
I'm very interested to hear if you have a particular Roddy story that you want to share.
I have many Roddy Piper stories.
Mm,
I paid to see Roddy Piper get his ass kicked at WrestleMania. I was a massive Roddy Piper fan. I was also one of those kids that grew up loving the good guys, hating the bad guys. When he was a bad guy, I hated him. When he was a good guy, I loved him. Now I'm
mm,
professional, and I love Jimmy Snuka. So I am a
mhm,
professional wrestler. I'm working in the WWE, and Roddy Piper is it was the European tour. Everything always happens in those European tours. And
mhm.
Roddy was in a bad place in life. And
Mhm.
I couldn't sleep. So I'm doing, and I've never told the story. So you're going to get a nice exclusive. A lot of you're going to get a lot of clicks.
Mm,
So Roddy is self medicating, and he walks
mhm.
past me, and I'm working out doing cardio. And I know right there, people are going to say this is bullshit because Dreamer's not doing cardio. I actually work out very hard to look this bad. So I'm on a elliptical or a stepper. It was on a stepper, actually. I used to like the stepper. And Roddy he walks past me and he's like, ugh. And again, I was like, hey, Roddy. And just goes into, and he's sitting at the pool, and I could see him from where I'm doing my elliptical. And he's just, again, walking back and forth. Then he takes off his like shoes, and he's sitting at the edge of the pool. And he's sitting at the edge of the pool. And I'm just watching him, and all of a sudden he goes in. And I'm like doing my cardio, and I'm like, whoa, I have to go. I jump off. I quickly top off my shoes, dive in, pull Roddy Piper out of the pool. I don't know if anyone has ever had to pull a person out of water. It's very hard to do.
Yeah.
He wasn't drowning. He wasn't, fighting for his life. He was just in a bad state.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to commit suicide. He just kind of fell in. I need to preface all these before all these people hear all the rest of the story or try to. So I bring him to the edge of the pool. And again, I don't know if anyone, like I said, I have my clothes on, and how everybody, like if you ever had to pull somebody out of the water, it's impossible. And now I'm trying to get him out of the pool, and I pull him up and I can't do it. I pull him up again. So then like I kind of lean him on his side, and I try to get the phone, and he starts to like kind of go down the steps again. So I got to pull him back up. And I finally go and I call one of the agents, and I was like, hey, Roddy's in a bad way. He's, we got to get him to his room. So we got a luggage cart, and we put him, and we bring him to his room. Mm-hmm. The next day and this whole tour, he was just in a bad place. And I should say that a lot of people were saying, oh, he's back on drugs, all this stuff. So the next day he loses the tag titles with him and Ric Flair, and they lost him to the Spirit Squad. And me and Edge are really, really close. And we go into this room. It's a giant locker room, and Roddy is kind of really despondent, and he's upset. So we go over him, and he's crying. And he was just like, after all I've ever done for this company, I wanted the plate with my name on it. I wanted to give it to my boy. I wanted to give it to my son. And they won't give it to me. I can't believe all the stuff that I've ever done here. So we're like, whoa. So we now go to, back then it was a place called Magic, is where the Magic happened. Mm-hmm. And I go to the Magic area, and the Magic Man, we tell him our story. He's like, listen, Roddy's, and he was like, well, the reason why I keep it, if they switch the titles tomorrow or the next week and I don't have that nameplate, I'll lose my job. And Edge is like, Roddy's not coming back, man. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what. There's a screwdriver over here, and I'm going to go get coffee, and I'll be back in 15 minutes. So right then and there, I go, I steal the nameplate. We go back into the room, and it's just this awesome moment. Me, Edge, and Roddy Piper, one of the guys who's my heroes growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
And Edge goes, hey, Roddy, Tommy did something that he could lose his job for, but he felt it was important, and I feel it was important. If there's anything that goes down, you cannot say what happened, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, what? And I present him his name on the title. He starts bawling, crying. He starts hugging me. Him and Edge are hugging Roddy Piper. Mm-hmm. We're having this awesome brother moment. He's crying. I'm crying. Edge is crying. I love you guys. This is what the business is about, the brotherhood. This is what the business is missing. I love you. I've never held a title in my life, and I just wanted this, and now I can give this. And then right away in this brotherly moment, Mark Dreamer's head kicks in. I was like, wait, you were the Intercontinental Champion. So how are you saying you didn't have a title? But I don't say it because I don't want to ruin this entire beautiful moment that I'm with, again, someone that myself and a lot of people worshipped. So anyway, Roddy Piper leaves. It turns out Roddy Piper had cancer again, and he wasn't just self-medication. And this has all been documented, right? This isn't this isn't my stuff.
Yeah.
So he comes back to the WWE after, whatever he had going on health-wise, and I'll never forget it, man. I see him at Madison Square Garden, and Roddy Piper starts walking up, and if you ever worked Madison Square Garden, there's a ramp, and you walk up this ramp, and if you're at the top of the ramp, you could see who's walking up. And I see him, and I'm like, oh my God, there he is. Like, what a great surprise. Didn't know he was even going to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And and after this brothering, awesome moment, he walks up to me, and goes, Roddy Piper, nice to meet you. And I was like, nice to meet you. I was crushed. Crushed.
Oh my gosh.
And I had met him so many times.
Yes.
Anyway, then I told him that story.
Yes.
And then he totally remembered me, and we became awesome, awesome friends. And that was one of my favorite Roddy Piper stories because
oh man,
it was just, one of those things where, again, in your life, how do you wind up here? How am I helping pretty much save Roddy Piper? Why is there nobody else here? And then the documented Roddy Piper return and all that stuff. It was a great time, and also crazy pro wrestler moments of my life.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, Tommy, is because we're both crazy pro wrestlers, and I'm doing this. I started this project, Wrestling is Life is Wrestling.
It is
because I've constantly in my life, for one, I know you have these moments too, where something happens in the real world and you just immediately think of pro wrestling. It happens multiple times a day to me. So like, it might be something silly. Like, I was traveling speaking, and there's a shop that had this sign that said TNA on it. And it was like, so I just had to take a picture of it. And then I'm thinking about TNA, and then I'm finding all these other connections in the shop to TNA wrestlers, even though it has nothing to do with wrestling. That's how my brain works. Cause I'm a wrestler brain. But on a deeper level, I've found that there's so many life situations that I've been in that lessons that I've learned from wrestling help me in those real life situations, because I have this perspective of wrestling, because they are the same. And I know you have those moments, and I've heard you kind of share stories and say things that kind of make me reflect and think about those things. So I kind of wanted to have you on here to chat about some of those things and to chat about your career. And also, I have found through sharing my story with people and talking to other wrestlers that something about wrestlers and their stories really inspire people, because we have this very unique job, and a lot of us have this really crazy stories that somewhere within our story something has happened to us that inspires somebody. And even that story that you just told, is inspiring, because one, you saved somebody's life, which is very rare, but you also interacted with and your life ended up commingling with somebody who you looked up to as a kid, which is so unique to our business, that we get to rub shoulders with these guys that are heroes. And I think I've heard you say this before, and it hits me. Yes. It's like, when you're a kid and you grow up watching Michael Jordan, you might meet Michael Jordan, but you don't get to play basketball with Michael Jordan.
Yep.
Right. I grew up when I was in high school, an ECW mark, and I loved Tommy Dreamer. And now I have wrestled Tommy Dreamer. I'm talking to Tommy Dreamer about life right now. I never take those things for granted, because it hits me all the time. And I know you're like that too. I mean, you don't take it for granted that you got to interact and have that moment, that very special brother moment with Roddy Piper.
Oh yeah. It is. It's unlike any other. It's the sport of sports entertainment, right? You can't do that. Joe Montana cannot throw a touchdown pass this weekend to George Kittle as much as if you want to. Tom Brady can no longer throw a touchdown pass to anybody. If you played in those eras with those guys, you might have had that chance or that opportunity.
I want to take a pause from our conversation to tell you about today's sponsor, ceofit.ca. Their byline is simple: conquer, evolve, overcome. Do you need to conquer your next workout? Or maybe you've hit a plateau in your exercise game and you need to evolve. Or you're starting to find there's some obstacles in the gym that you can't overcome. CEO Fit will help you conquer, evolve, and overcome any obstacle in your way with their top of the line supplements. Whether it's a pre-workout to help you crush that next cardio session, or man, you did crush that cardio session and you need to fill your muscles back up with some high quality protein, we got that for you at ceofit.ca. There's also creatine, vitamins, test boosters, seasonings, and syrups to make your meal not just tasty but healthy too. Oh, I can't forget, they're not just going to help you work out your muscles, they're going to help you work out your brain. They got nootropics for brain function right now at ceofit.ca. Are you a Canadian that you've listened to commercials like this before and then you jump on the website and realize, wait a minute, this free shipping or cheap shipping that they're talking about doesn't apply to me because I'm Canadian? Well, guess what? ceofit.ca is a proud Canadian company, and we are offering to you Canadian listeners any order over $120, free shipping. Now, you US customers and listeners right now might be going, wait a minute, what about me? Well, I got something for you too. It doesn't matter how big your order is. You might go over there and go, man, I need it all. And you get 10 boxes full of these awesome supplements. It's going to cost you $6. $6. Any size order, anywhere in the United States, $6 in shipping. Not only that, Americans, with the conversion rate, any price that you see on ceofit.ca, it's going to convert it to US dollars. So everything's going to be even cheaper for my American customers. So you need to conquer, you need to evolve, you need to overcome. Well, there's only one place that you need to go, and that's ceofit.ca. That's ceofit.ca.
I mean, I think about, like, man, I was at WrestleMania 1, right? The first ever WrestleMania. And then it's WrestleMania 40. So I'm wrestling 34 years. 6 years later, I was wrestling. And I'm like, how is that a thing? And, you know, I tell you story, like, I show people pictures of my daughters. Or earlier we talked about, like, you know, I have pictures of, I have my voices of my daughters, and like things change in so quickly. And, you know, yes, you have to enjoy those moments because we can't take anything for granted. I took so much of my life for granted pre-COVID. And then when the world shut down, I honestly thought that, like, that, because you know me, I mean, we're friends. I thought I pretty much don't live a life of pain. I have weird aches and stuff, but like, I thought the moment I stopped wrestling, that's where I was like, I always got to keep going because I would break the moment I stopped. And then during the pandemic, I was like, wait, I could be normal. I could, like, not wrestle for, you know, I think the longest I've ever gone not wrestling was like 1 week.
Yeah.
And like, you know, those times during ECW, dude, like I was crippled. I had, and wrestlers have told me this story, you know, they were like, remember when you used to just be able to lay on the floor and your music would hit and we'd pick you up under your armpits and throw you out and you would just walk? Like, that's magic. It's the magic of fans, magic of adrenaline, magic of pro wrestling. But yes, like, you could get advice from, you know, those people. LeBron James could help, you know, somebody, and LeBron played against both Kobe and Michael Jordan. But in how many more years, no one's going to be able to say, hey, I got to play against LeBron James. I got to do this against this guy. It gets lost in generations. So yes, you have to take that for granted because, I mean, for us as wrestlers, our careers can end tomorrow. I know I'm on the latter part of my career. I love doing it, but I also know my body is one day just going to be like, I can't do this anymore. So, and even like, thinking about like all the lessons that Terry Funk taught me, and he was always like, every day of wrestling is a good day. And what crushed me when I would talk to him, and there was so many times like I was like wanting to get him, like he could get booked, which was awesome. Just the fact that he could get booked at any time during his age. And he was like, I can't travel anymore. I can't fly anymore. And I was like, I'll get a bus. I'll rent whatever you need. And he's just like, I physically can't do it anymore. And then he like, but I miss it. And it's like, we don't want to have regret, regret is a tough thing to deal with, especially when you're getting on later in life. I'm not saying Terry didn't have any regrets, but what I'm saying is he really missed. I called him one day, me, him, and Shane Douglas, and we talked for about 30 minutes. And he ended the conversation. He goes, "Thank you for including me. I really just wish I was in that car with you guys."
Yeah.
And I was just like, he's a second generation wrestler, gave his entire life to the industry. And the things that we took for granted, of just, how many times I got a 6-hour car drive, then you realize, oh shit, I miss those car rides. I used to be able, I think about me as a kid. My parents, every summer we go down, we drive from New York to Florida. It's a 24-hour trip south of the border the entire time. Both my parents are gone. My daughters, like, we would always drive to Michigan. I can't physically do that drive anymore, so I have to fly and meet them. I wish I could be in that car, but I physically can't anymore because then my body starts breaking down. So I mean, it's just things like that, like you can't take for granted. And wrestling is life. Actually, the person who first smartened me up to that was Beulah McGillicuddy. When she left ECW, she went into the real world, and she was a camera person in the local news. And then she would be like, "Oh, this guy's got so much heat with me," or "This girl's got so much heat with me," or "I could see this person, how they're angling to be a top guy," and like all these wrestler terms that in the real world they don't know what you're saying. But she was like, "Oh, this person's doing this." You could see their business coming because we've dealt with so much in the world of pro wrestling. And I was like, interesting. But I haven't been in the real world in forever, though I've worked, I was a president in a publicly traded company in WWE, but it wasn't a real corporation in the sense of any, like, it's just so different in the wrestling world.
Yeah.
Please,
you said
am I going to tell your story? You're going to tell your story because you just told me that we just had this conversation, and
we can jump to that. If you want. I love it.
We're all over the place here. We don't need no outline.
No.
For those who know or don't know, I worked in WWE behind the scenes. I was the man who was the front line of I hired you, and so I used to also have to get extras, kind of like a casting agent for WWE, or hey, I think this person's good, we should hire them. And then I ran the developmental systems, which were NXT, whatever. It was OVW and Deep South Wrestling for a little bit. Anyway, so every time we're in the Canada area, maybe Detroit-ish, and I would back then get 8x10s and VCR tapes, and I would write down your name, your gimmick name, and your phone number, and I would say good, bad, shits. We should use this person, blah, blah, blah. And it was, and the reason why we just had this conversation, Ronnie Arnell was his real name.
Ronnie Arneal,
Arneal, who was in WWE, Gavin Spears, then Sean Spears, the 10 guy, yourself, and another wrestler that you remind me of his name, Derek Wild.
That's right. Danger Boy Derek Wild.
And you were my 3 go-to guys. I was like, God, these guys are good. I want to get them hired.
Yeah.
So I was eventually able to get Sean Spears hired. I could not get you hired, could not get Derek hired, but whenever you guys were in town, I would try to do my best to hire you. So at least like more opportunities, more looks. Be Rude was one of those guys for a little bit. Anyway, so that was kind of my position. If I believed you was one thing, but there's a process. So now please tell your side of this story, because I didn't remember any of this until you told me.
Yes. So I'll tell you maybe even a little bit more than I even told you the other day, because the first time I ever talked to you, I was in university. I was getting my English degree. And I was also doing indie wrestling and working my butt off, but getting my degree at the same time. And I started to send in VHS tapes and not getting any calls, but just keep sending them religiously. And then one day I came back from class, and my girlfriend at the time said to me, you got a phone call from someone named Tommy Dreamer. And I go, what? I go, who's ribbing me? Like, I'm assuming that one of the boys is ribbing me. I'm like, why would Tommy Dreamer call me? And you had just gotten into your position at the office, like really soon from there. And so I jump on the internet and I see, oh my God, like Tommy Dreamer is actually in the office at WWE. This is real. And it's a 203 number. And oh my God, that's a Connecticut number. So I call it, you immediately answer. And we talked for like 30 minutes, Tommy. And you said things like, I remember you saying, you're very good. I really like you. Your match was awesome. You and Derek Wilder are amazing. You can't wrestle at all like you did in the videotape, but I still want to bring you in. You were like painfully honest about everything, which I respected and appreciated from day one. So I got my very first tryout because of you. I actually wrestled in a dark match my first time, which was rare. A lot of guys wouldn't get like immediately on. That was kind of at the tail end of them doing a lot of dark matches, with extras. So I had a very competitive match with Muhammad Hassan. Then the next day I did the Kurt Angle Invitational. Things went very well. I got brought in more and more. At that time I was wrestling as Cody Steele. Then I came up with a gimmick because I wasn't getting hired as Cody Steele. I eventually came up with this character, Cody Deaner, and I started sending tapes in there. And one day I'm sitting on my grandmother's porch on a cottage on the beach, and I'm like doing my phone call, and you answer the phone. This is Cody. Hi, Cody. I'm like, how are things going? Like, I want to come in. I want to do an extra. I was like, you're very over, Cody. And I'm like, in my heart, I'm like, oh my God, I'm over. What does he mean? Like, your picture, you said, is up on one of the writer's walls in his cubicle. And it was Krista Joseph. You're very over. He has his 8x10 of you up in his cubicle. I'm like, oh. In my mind, it's like, it's exploding. My heart is fluttering. I'm like, oh my God, I'm over with the creative team in WWE. I'm like, sweet. What do I do? And you're like, nothing. I go, like, okay. Well, what do you mean? You're like, well, you do nothing. You're TV ready. We're not hiring a guy like you right now. So just wait. And if an opportunity comes up, I will call you. And I was like, oh. So I went from this like elation of being over with, of like, oh my God, I might get a job, to no, you can't get a job but you are over, and you wanted to tell me that. So I felt good, but then there was nothing I could do. And for me, it was bittersweet, because I've always been a hard worker in the sense, like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm a company guy. I'll do what is told. I'll make sure that I might not always hit a home run, but I'm going to get on base every time, no matter what I'm asked to do. So then I was like, well, what do I do? And the answer was nothing. It's like, shit, like this is the goal. I want it to happen, and it wasn't going to happen. So we laughed about it because I told you that story, and you were like, "Oh my God, I was always really honest with you, wasn't I?" And I said, "Yeah, you never bullshitted me. You always told me like it was, whether it was going to be easy or hard for me to hear." But I
And in
always,
his defense,
yeah.
DJ did Krista Joseph, where we call him
Mhm.
DJ.
Okay.
He did pitch a few angles for you, and they just kind
Really?
of got down. Yeah.
Yeah. One of those angles that I know got pitched, I don't know if it was from him, but it was from I went and did one extra shot and with Jimmy Wang Yang, and he saw me and he's like, dude, he loved the gimmick because he understood it completely, and he's like, me and you should be a tag. I'm like, yeah, we should. And he goes, I have an idea. He goes, I'll be the Asian who thinks that I'm a redneck, and then you're gonna be the redneck that thinks he's a ninja.
Ooh.
And yeah, so I actually filmed the promo and like sent it in, and like just to be a kid, like Tommy, the when I was sitting on my grandma's porch, like that was in the town that I grew up in, a small little port town, population of less than 200 people. So I'm sitting in this little town in the middle of nowhere talking to Tommy Dreamer, and then like months later, shooting the shit with a guy who's on television, coming up with potential ideas for me to be on TV. It was to even explain how that even feels, just even though it didn't happen, but the fact that was even happening was something that is hard to even describe to somebody.
Right.
That how much that kind of meant that was even happening. And it really boosted my confidence as well, because knowing, being able to hang in the ring and wrestle with in a dark match or someone with Kurt Angle, and realizing, oh, I can hang with these guys and I don't look out of place, was
Right.
such a huge confidence booster for me that eventually led to me getting a contract with TNA and moving forward and starting to wrestle on TV. And then my career progressed from there. But that was a huge confidence booster for me. And you being somebody that saw something in me and even brought me in to do a dark match kind of started that progression of confidence and a trajectory in my career that I don't think would have happened if you wouldn't have given me that shot.
Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, I'm older than you. My generation was, I'm a mark. I got to be kept out of the business. And then also, like, we don't want your type in the business, or even if you come into the business, like I was ingrained forever, dude, like forever. Once you're a wrestler, you don't ever go to see wrestling. There's the big debate now. Don't take the picture, take the picture.
Right.
And there was people who they would try to break you down to leave the industry instead of encourage you and build you up. And I always kind of try to do the, hey, I get it. Not everyone's going to make it, but like there's the whys, like you said. I remember when my first ever tape that I sent to the WWE, and I received a letter in the mail, and I remember like seeing that letterhead, and I was like, oh my God. And like, why they, and like, I'm in my head, like, I have a contract in this envelope right now.
That's going to do it for another episode of Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. How's that for a cliffhanger, guys? I know how Tommy's feeling when he opens that envelope and he sees it, because, man, in wrestling, we have all of these teases and opportunities and moments where we're like, this is it. My life's going to change. I'm sure you can relate. If you're not a professional wrestler, you're listening to this right now, you're just an everyday average civilian that's just kind of eavesdropping on these wrestlers talk about life. I'm sure there's been a moment in your life where you're like, something about this moment right now is going to change my life. I'm sure that you've had that moment, and this is the moment that Tom and Dreamer's talking about. Next week, we will start where we have just left off with this opening of this envelope, and we'll continue the story, and we'll continue story time with Tommy Dreamer. If you have enjoyed today's episode and today's stories, hit me up at Cody Deaner on social media, on my X/Twitter, on my Instagram. I got a Facebook page as well. I'm old school that way. Hit me up on there and let me know what you think of today's episode. If you don't want to wait until next week to hear the end of this story and you want more story time with Tommy Dreamer right now, how about you sign up for a free trial over at patreon.com/Cody Deaner. Yes, I said free trial. You can get this full conversation right now. Next week's part 2, it's up right now over at patreon.com/Cody Deaner. Get a free trial. Listen to that. Also listen to 2 free bonus stories. They are doozies from my friend Tommy, and they are also up right now. You can watch them, you can listen to them, and you can support me and this project I got going on by going over to patreon.com/Cody Deaner. Don't forget to help my sponsors, because if you're supporting my sponsors, you're supporting me. Head on over to restwhendead.ca. Get yourself some wicked awesome workout swag. If you want some workout supplements, go to ceofit.ca. Why don't you get a Cameo this week too? Cameo.com/Cody Deaner. I can do a crazy wacky video for you. Or you want a t-shirt, like you want to support this project specifically? We got some Wrestling is Life is Wrestling with Cody Deaner t-shirts over at prowrestlingtees.com/Cody Deaner. I am loving the independent wrestling shows I've been doing recently, not just because I love wrestling and I love being in the ring, but I love chatting with my fans and my listeners. People have been coming up to me at every single indie show I've done over the last number of months and not just told me that they love my Rest When Dead swag that I'm selling at the merch table. They don't just love the match that I had that night, knocking some dude out with a DDT, but they love Wrestling is Life is Wrestling. They love my podcast. I want to do more indie shows. So if you are a promoter or a local indie wrestling fan and you want to reach out to a promoter, you say, hey, book Cody right now. How do you do that? Well, it's easy. Hit him up. Book Cody at CodyDeaner.com. That's book Cody at CodyDeaner.com. And I can share my love of professional wrestling with you and your wrestling fans. I also do seminars, usually before shows, with local talent to help them improve their skills and give them just a few more tools in their toolbox, both in wrestling and in life. Why? Because I'm all about how wrestling really is life and life is wrestling. You know that. Speaking of life, another life that I have and that I live is as a professional speaker. I travel all across North America going into schools, sharing my story and my journey in wrestling and attaching life lessons to that journey and to that story. I've been doing that for almost a decade now, and I love it. It's something that I am always going to do because I get great satisfaction from that, and it's very, very meaningful to me. Let me just tell you a quick story. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but before you hit stop there, I think you might want to hear this one. I was just doing a speaking tour set up by a friend of mine named Jeff Westlake. Jeff, he's probably listening right now. Shout out, Jeff. How's it going, Jeff? I met Jeff Westlake at an indie wrestling show, like I was just telling you that I do. And I met his son. His son's name is Hunter. And I was hanging out with Hunter, and Jeff appreciated the time I was spending with Hunter, and we developed a friendship. I've known Jeff for many years, and Jeff is associated with the Kiwanis Club, which is a community group that just helps youth in their city, in their town, and helps them with programming, like leadership programs, educational resources, all about kind of having fun in their community. And I started to partner with the Kiwanis Club, specifically in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. And for the last number of years, they have sponsored tours of me going into both elementary, middle, and secondary schools in the city of Peterborough. And just a couple weeks ago, I went into an elementary school in Peterborough, which was sponsored by the Kiwanis Club of Peterborough, and went there with my buddy Jeff Westlake, and I delivered my story and my message to these kids. This particular presentation was for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. And after I was done, I was taking some photos with the kids because I always want to I always just want to spend time with them and give them a chance to tell me their story. What I do as a speaker isn't just kind of speaking at kids. I like to speak with kids. So I give them a chance to kind of give me some feedback and talk to me and tell me something, maybe share their story with me. Oh, man. And this young boy came up to me after I was done speaking, and he just looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, "Thank you." And he started weeping. He started crying. And his name was Hunter, actually. And this isn't Jeff's son, but I immediately kind of looked at Jeff, and he looked at me, and we both recognized this kind of special moment with this young boy named Hunter, that shared the same name as my buddy and Jeff's son, Hunter. And I knew this kid, was coming to me, thanking me for sharing my story, and it just brought him to tears, and he could do nothing but just say thank you. So I put my arm around the little boy, and I started talking to him. I started speaking to him and speaking into him and letting him know that he was a brave young man for being willing to be that vulnerable with his emotions, and brave that even though it was making him cry, he wanted to make sure that I knew how thankful he was for coming to his school and sharing with him my story. And I came to learn that Hunter has been through some really, really tough times the last number of weeks and months at his school. And my message couldn't have come at a better time for him. And it was in that moment that I knew the reason I went on that tour was because of that young boy Hunter. I knew that's why I'm here. If no one else gets anything from any of the messages that I have to share over the next couple of days that I'm here on this tour, it's okay, because Hunter needed to hear my story. I have countless stories like that in my walk as a professional speaker, going into schools, and it's just stories like that and moments like that that make me, I guess, remind me that I'm exactly where I need to be, and that is why I do what I do. Create moments of impact for young people, and moments that they'll never forget, and honestly, I'll never forget as well, that can hopefully help them springboard into a better tomorrow, both for them and the community around them. So if you would like me to come to your school or to your event and help make moments of impact for your young people, you can hit me up. You can learn all about my speaking programs and what I have to offer schools at chrisgrayspeaks.com. That's Gray with an A, chrisgrayspeaks.com. And I would love to chat with you. Drop me an email. My contact information is right there on that website, and we can chat about how I can maybe come and make a difference in your community and share my story with your people. So next week, we are going to, speaking of stories, we're going to hear some more stories, and I think it's going to make an impact on you as well, because Tommy's got some more stories to tell. We left on a cliffhanger this week. We'll pick up where we left off next week for part 2 for more stories that I know when you hear those stories, just like every week on this show, you're again going to realize and know that, hey, it's so obvious. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling. We'll see you next week, guys.
Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Wrestling is life. Is wrestling.